Millions of people are asking the same question right now. Not out loud, quietly, to themselves. Late at night when the phone is finally put down. In the morning, before the news is turned on, already knowing something happened again. The question is simple. When does this end? And how? No one has the answer. Or so it seems. Because there is something that politicians don't talk about. Something military analysts don't cover. An ancient teaching from deep within the Asian tradition, from places where people spent thousands of years learning to see the world differently. And this teaching says, what is happening right now is not chaos, not a coincidence, not anyone's evil plan. It is a change of breath, a change of age. And here's the strangest part. What this teaching says about our time almost word for word matches what a blind Bulgarian prophetess predicted 33 years ago and ordered kept secret until 2026. Matches what Nostradamus encoded in the 16th century. Matches what the prophet Daniel warned about 600 years before Christ. And matches what Indian sages wrote down even earlier in texts more than 3,000 years old. Different peoples, different centuries, different languages, one and the same picture. When that happens, it is no longer coincidence. It is knowledge. So what does this teaching say? And why does it sound today as if it was written yesterday? According to ancient tradition, the entire world is sustained by the breath of 6 dragons. Not the Western kind, the ones you slay with a sword. Eastern dragons. In Asian cosmology, a dragon is not an enemy. It is a force, a power so vast it cannot be stopped. Only understood. 6 dragons dwell in the infinite black sky. Each carries its own element, and each breathes in turn. When its hour comes, the entire world begins to live inside that element. Not because someone decided it. Simply, it is time to breathe. And the breath of one dragon lasts for years, sometimes for decades. Every color is its own age, its own energy, its own suffering, or its own freedom. And here is what matters. History has already confirmed this system twice. Precisely. Think about the 1960s. The entire world seemed to lose its mind in the best possible way. Music got louder. Borders collapsed. Young people filled the streets not with weapons, but with flowers. Moral codes that had held for centuries flipped within a few years. The sexual revolution, civil rights, the counterculture, all of it happened almost simultaneously across the entire world, with no single center of command, as if someone had opened an invisible valve. According to this teaching, that was the red dragon breathing. Its element is passion, love, fire. When it exhales, the world ignites from within, not with war, with the desire to live differently. Then came the yellow dragon. Its element is disease and wealth at the same time, a strict teacher that gives and immediately takes away. 2020, the pandemic. Humanity was locked inside its homes. Some lost everything. Others built fortunes that same year on masks, vaccines, online commerce. Disease and wealth side by side, exactly as this dragon's nature prescribes. Coincidence? Or an exhale? 2 dragons. 2 periods. Both recognizable to the bone. And now, the third, the one whose breath has covered us right now. It is called the Black Dragon. And it is this one, in unison, that Nostradamus, the Bible, and the Indian Vedas all speak about. They have been speaking about it for a long time. Only before now, no one was listening carefully enough. His name is Karagay, a shaman, a writer, a researcher of Asian tradition, a descendant of Siberian old believers who fled long ago into the mountains of Tuva. His bloodline carried a shaman, and he continues that work. He spent 2 years in Nepal, working with local communities as an astrologer, studying in a Tibetan monastery in Kathmandu. The Ministry of Culture of Nepal granted him the status of one of 16 gurus of the country. He does not sell amulets at a market stall. He does not read fortunes from photographs on the internet. He studies a tradition, one that is thousands of years old. And here is what he says about our time. The color black is rarely used in shamanic tradition. It is too heavy for rituals. There is the white dragon. It created the laws of the universe. There is the blue dragon. It painted the sky above us. There is the green dragon. It multiplies families and forests. But the black dragon is different. Mix all the colors of the rainbow in equal measure, and you get black. It absorbs everything. That is precisely why it takes all pain onto itself. The black dragon governs change, the turning of day into night, cycles of fortune and fatal failure, birth and death. It is not a destroyer and not a savior. It is a debt collector. It arrives when hidden contradictions can no longer stay hidden, when illusions have accumulated past their limit, when what people, nations, and entire civilizations have been concealing from each other and from themselves comes to the surface, forcibly, painfully, without warning. This is why most peoples of the world chose black as the color of mourning, not because it is gloomy, but because it is a tribute to the creature that takes on the pain of others, that does what everyone else turns away from. Karagay says it plainly. For the past several years, we have been living through the active exhale of the black dragon. This is the time when the accumulation of intentions, personal, governmental, collective, was building toward a boiling point. While its lungs were full, tension was growing across the world. Within its power was the ability to provoke actions leading to conflict, division, and tests of endurance. The black dragon is not for or against anything. It is about reality. When it breathes, illusions burn away, and hidden contradictions come to the surface. Look at the last several years not as a series of separate events, but as a single picture. Conflicts that have been smoldering for decades, ignited. Alliances that seemed unbreakable, cracked. Leaders who appeared immovable began to shake. Economies that looked stable exposed their fractures. Everything hidden came to the surface. That is exactly how the black dragon works. It does not create the problems. It reveals the ones that were already there. But here is the most important thing Karagay says. Every breath has an end. When the dragon's breath runs out, a phase of painful exhale begins. The ending of the black dragon cycle is always the heaviest. It is the time when pain reaches maximum concentration before it leaves. This is exactly where we are right now. Not in the middle, at the end, at the point where pressure reaches its peak and the mechanism that was fueling escalation stops working. Karagay describes it this way: exhaustion of systems, the impossibility of further escalation, strange pauses where before there were immediate strikes. This is not a ceasefire in the human sense. This is the physiological cessation of provocation at the highest order. The dragon is exhaling for the last time. You might think this is simply a beautiful Eastern metaphor, that a shaman from Siberia invented a poetic fable to explain geopolitics. Then listen to what others say. Those separated from Karagay by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Those who never heard of any dragons, but arrived at exactly the same picture. 3,000 years ago, on the other side of the earth, Indian sages described the same thing, only in different words. They called it Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the Age of Darkness, the last of 4 great epochs through which humanity passes in a cycle, again and again, without stopping. The signs of Kali Yuga are listed precisely in the ancient texts. Morality collapses. Rulers become tyrants. People live in constant anxiety. Disease and war multiply. Wealth concentrates in the hands of a few. Words lose their meaning. People say one thing and do another. Honor becomes weakness and cruelty becomes the norm. You read it, and you involuntarily look out the window. But here's what those same texts say next. Kali Yuga is not eternal. It ends when evil fills the world to its very edge, and there is nowhere left to go. At precisely that point of maximum tension, something breaks. The old order collapses by itself, not from an outside blow, from its own inner emptiness, and a new cycle begins. In the Indian tradition, this is called pralaya, dissolution, not an ending, a reset. The black dragon of Karagay and the Kali Yuga of the ancient Vedas are the same creature, simply named differently on different sides of the earth. Now, the Bible, the 6th century before Christ. The prophet Daniel, the king of Babylon, had a dream. A towering statue, a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron mixed with clay, and a stone that broke loose from a mountain by itself, without any human hand, and struck the feet of that statue, and the statue collapsed. All of it, at once. Daniel explained, these are 4 kingdoms, for ages, each worse than the one before. Gold gives way to silver, silver to bronze, bronze to iron. And iron mixed with clay is the most brittle of all. It looks hard, but inside, there is no unity. The parts do not hold together. Iron mixed with clay. Power without cohesion. strength without meaning, nations with nuclear weapons that cannot agree on grain, alliances that fall apart in plain sight, leaders who speak of peace while preparing for war. This is the final kingdom according to Daniel. After it, the stone. After it, something new. Daniel named no dates. But he described the structure precisely. The worst comes last. And the worst destroys itself, not from an outside blow, but from its own inner emptiness. The black dragon of Karagay, the Kali Yuga of the Indian sages, the iron legs with clay of the prophet Daniel. 3 different languages, 3 different traditions, one and the same thought. We are living at the end of the last bad age, not in the middle, at the end. And finally, Vanga, 1993, Good Friday. The blind Bulgarian prophetess dictated a text to her niece Krasimira Stoyanova and ordered it not to be published for 33 years, until 2026. Why 33? She explained, they will not understand. They will laugh. And then when the time comes, they will forget or use it for harm. For 33 years, the text lay in a school notebook, in an old suitcase. The time came, and the words came out. Here is what she said. This is the end of the old world, the old order, the old rules. The world will not end, it will change. Not apocalypse, not ashes, not the end of humanity, the end of an order. The very order that is cracking apart right now before our eyes. Vanga described the final days of this old world almost hour by hour. A growing feeling that something is going wrong. The silencing of machines. Panic spreading through cities. A silence so complete that people are afraid to breathe. And then dawn and gates. Between the old world and the new. Some will pass into the light, some into the darkness. It depends on what a person carries when they approach those gates. Not an end. A beginning. Karagay says, the exhale of the black dragon is ending. Vanga says, this is the end of the old order. Daniel says, the statue will fall on its own. The Indian Vedas say, Kali Yuga ends when evil reaches its limit. For voices, for traditions, for ages. One verdict on the old world, and one in the same question that follows from all of this. What comes after? There is a moment in any investigation when the number of coincidences stops being coincidences, when the evidence assembles into a picture and denying it becomes impossible, not because you want to believe, but because the math leaves no choice. Here's that math. A shaman from Siberia living in the 21st century, a blind Bulgarian prophetess who died in 1996, a French astrologer of the 16th century writing quatrains by candlelight, a Jewish prophet thrown into Babylonian captivity 600 years before Christ. Indian sages who recorded their texts before the first European cities ever existed. Not one of them read the others. Not one knew of the existence of the rest, at least not in the way we understand it. Between them, thousands of miles and thousands of years. And all of them speak about the same thing, about the same point in human history, about a breaking point, about the end of one thing and the beginning of another, about how first it will get very bad, and then it will be different, completely different. This is not religion, not mysticism. This is statistics. When 5 independent sources describe the same picture, that is no longer faith. That is data. So what exactly did they see? What stands behind this breaking point? And, most importantly, what comes after? Let us start with Nostradamus, because he is the most specific of all. Michel de Nostradame, France, 1555, a physician, an astrologer, a man of encyclopedic knowledge by the standards of his time. He did not consider himself a prophet in the religious sense. He called what he did astrological calculation, the observation of patterns, of how the cycles of celestial bodies overlay the cycles of human history. His book, 942 quatrains, encoded 4-line verses written in a mixture of Old French, Latin, and deliberately tangled imagery. He himself explained this complexity. Words about the future spoken too directly are dangerous. People misuse them. So images. So symbols. Over 5 centuries, his quatrains have been decoded by thousands of people, and in them they found the French Revolution, Napoleon, Hitler, the atomic bomb, September 11th. Skeptics say, in vague poetry you can find anything, and they are right, in part, because some quatrains are vague, and others are disturbingly specific. Here is what he wrote about our time. The quatrain about the West losing its light. Mars rules its course among the stars, while the western side sinks into silence and goes dark. Interpreters read this as the weakening of Western dominance against the rising power of the East, not a military defeat. Precisely, silence, the quiet fading of a system that once seemed permanent. Look at what is happening right now. The institutions that governed the world for 80 years, cracking. The dollar, the alliances, the media systems, the cultural dominance. All of it quietly losing grip. Not in one explosion. In silence. Exactly as Nostradamus described. The quatrain about the great swarm of bees rising from a night ambush. The bee in the symbolism of different ages is an image of power. Bees adorn the throne of Egyptian pharaohs. Napoleon wore them on his robes. A swarm is not one person. It is a coalition. A new force rising not openly, from the shadows, from ambush, unexpectedly. Who is this swarm today? New alliances forming outside Western structures? Old players returning under new conditions? Nostradamus did not specify. He only warned, it will happen suddenly. And finally, the words with which he ends this cycle of dark images. Words that sharply contrast with everything that came before. The shadows will fall, but the man of light will rise. The stars will guide those who look inward, not outward, inward. After the period of wars, crises, and the collapse of old systems, Nostradamus sees not emptiness. He sees renewal, the emergence of a new kind of person, or a new kind of leader, or a new kind of thinking, one born not from the force of weapons, but from inner wisdom. Carnegie says, the exhale of the black dragon is ending, and whatever we throw into that fire now will burn weakly and pointlessly. Nostradamus says, the shadows will fall, and the man of light will rise. This is one and the same thought, said 5 centuries apart. Now back to Vanga, because she said something about the coming world that cannot be passed over. Vanga returned to the theme of a new world order not once and not by accident. It was one of her consistent threads. The system of governance will change. People will unite. They will find strength within themselves. Light will come into the world. Notice, not military victory, not conquest. Light. That was the precise word she used. And one more of her predictions that concerns the near future. She said, peace between those who are now in conflict will come after brothers go against each other and the younger yields to the elder. Not victory of one over the other in the conventional sense. A yielding. And after it, a new unity. Believe it or not, that is each person's choice. But here is what is strange. Nostradamus said the same thing, only in different words. In his quatrains, he described the emergence of what he called a new branch from a tree that had long been barren. A tree without branches is a tree without continuation, without a future, without reason to exist. And here, a new branch, not a new tree, precisely a branch from the old one, from what appeared to have dried up, from roots that went nowhere for a long time, but never disappeared. This is an image of renewal through return, not revolution, evolution, not a break from the past, a growing out of it. And then, the words from his letter to King Henry II, considered his greatest political testament. There will arise a new branch from the tree that long remained barren, and from it will come renewal. Then peace, agreement, and unity will be established between those whose lands have been divided by different ideas and borders. Children with different ideas and borders. That is a precise description of what is happening right now in the world. You could not say it more accurately. Let us return to Carnegie, because he says something very important about what is happening right now, in this period between the old and the new. The breath of the black dragon no longer fuels conflicts, but we have grown accustomed to living in a state of constant heat. We invest in confrontations, not necessarily with money, with attention, with emotions, with fear, with anger. We replay grievances in our minds. We generate new intentions for fighting, and all of it out of momentum, because that is how it has been for years, because the nervous system learned this as its normal state. But the dragon will no longer pick up that spark. Everything thrown into the fire now will burn weakly, slowly, and pointlessly, poisoning the air but giving no warmth. This sounds like philosophy, but behind it stands something very concrete. Look at the exhaustion of systems, at the strange pauses where before there were immediate strikes, at negotiations beginning where a year ago they seemed impossible. at leaders who suddenly begin speaking about an exit after speaking only about victory. This is not weakness. This is the end of a breath, a physiological process that does not depend on anyone's will. The black dragon is exhaling its last. And in this silence, between two breaths, there is something very valuable, something people have not had for several years. A pause, the ability to not react, the ability to choose where to go from here, not away from something, towards something. This is exactly what Nostradamus speaks of when he writes about the man of light who will rise, and what Vanga means when she says, "The new world will be better for those who carry light within themselves," and what the Indian Vedas describe as Satya Yuga, the golden age that follows the Iron One. Not immediately, not without labor pains, but it follows, always. But there is one question that hangs in the air. Fine, the old order is leaving. Fine, the prophets agree. Fine, the black dragon exhales its last. What comes next? Who arrives after? Karagay has the answer, and it is unexpected, because the next dragon is not about war and not about disease, not about power and not about money. The next one is about us, about what most people have had at the very bottom of their list for the past several years, about family, about roots, about those who matter to us and to whom we matter. When the breath of one dragon ends, the world does not remain in emptiness. A pause exists, but it is short, and in that pause, if you know where to look, the outline of the next one is already visible. The next dragon is the green dragon. Its element is family, roots, the connection between generations, the thing that does not break in any breath, not in the most terrible one, not in the most joyful one. Karagay says, as soon as the green dragon begins to act, its exhale will multiply what already exists. Not create from nothing. Multiply. That is an important word, because it means what you bring into the new age. That is what you will receive back, amplified. If you enter with emptiness, you receive more emptiness. If you enter with living connections, you receive more of what is alive. This is not mysticism. This is the logic of any new beginning. But before speaking about what to build, it is necessary to understand what the black dragon destroyed inside us. Not outside. Inside. Karagay speaks about this directly. The yellow dragon that breathed before the black one passed through everything it could reach. Disease, restrictions, fear for those we love. All of it settled into human bodies. People learned to live in stress, with clenched jaws, in constant anticipation of the next blow. Even when no blow comes, the body waits for it, because that is how it was for a long time, because the nervous system memorized this as its normal state. And then the black dragon came and added more on top. Conflicts, ruptures, the impossibility of making plans, the feeling that the ground is sliding out from under your feet, and there is no way of knowing when it will stop. The result, millions of people are living in a body that is stuck in a state of alarm. Even now, even when it is quiet outside, inside it is never quiet. Inside, something is still waiting. And now, the air is changing. Karagay says this carefully, but he says it. The air is changing. The dragon is no longer fueling escalation. The mechanism of provocation at the highest order is stopping. And for the first time in a long while, a person has something they have not had. The ability to exhale for real. Not for 5 minutes before sleep. For real. But this does not happen by itself. The body does not release stress automatically, simply because the dragon has changed. A choice is required. A conscious one. To stop. To remember that you have a body. Not as an instrument for achieving goals, but as a home. The only home you have been living in all this time. Now about roots. About what the green dragon will multiply. Karagay asks a question that seems simple, but is not simple at all. What is the state of your roots? Not in a metaphorical sense, in a literal one. Are there people nearby who need you? People who matter to you? Is there someone you could call, not for business, but just to talk? Is there someone who would call you? The last several years took exactly that from many people. Not money and not health, though those too. They took living connections. Conflicts divided families. Distances grew. People who used to see each other every week stopped seeing each other entirely, and somehow quietly got used to it. It became normal not to call. It became normal not to visit. It became normal to be near, but apart. The green dragon will multiply what is there. That is a warning, and at the same time, a clue. Vanga spoke about this differently. Her language is not the language of dragons, but the meaning is the same. She returned again and again to the theme of family and unity as conditions for surviving what she called the New World. Peace between those who are now in conflict will come after brothers go against each other, and the younger yields to the elder, not because one is stronger, because someone will be first to remember that they are brothers. Brothers. She used that word deliberately, not allies, not partners, brothers, people who share common roots, who can fight until they bleed, and still remain those who once sat at the same table. The new world she saw does not begin with treaties and not with surrenders. It begins when someone remembers the common roots and takes a step. Nostradamus described this in his imagery differently, but again about the same thing. A new branch from a tree that had long remained barren. A tree without branches is a tree without continuation, without a future, without reason to exist. And here, a new branch, not a new tree, precisely a branch from the old one, from what appeared to have dried out, from roots that went nowhere for a long time, but never disappeared. This is an image of renewal through return, not revolution, evolution, not a break from the past, a growing out of it. After all of this, peace, agreement, and unity between those whose lands have been divided by different ideas and borders. Those divided by different ideas and borders. That is an exact description of what is happening in the world right now. You could not say it more precisely. And now, India again, because it is the Indian tradition that gives the most complete answer to the question of what stands behind this turning point on the scale of all human history. After Kali Yuga, after the Iron Age, after the Age of Darkness, comes Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, the Age of Truth. This is not a utopia and not a fairy tale. This is the next phase of the cycle, the one in which the human mind is at the peak of its capacity, the one in which the ability of people to understand each other is at its highest level. But there is an important condition, one that is usually overlooked when people speak of this transition. The Golden Age does not arrive for everyone automatically. It arrives for those who are ready for it, for those who during the period of transition, during that very pause between two breaths, did not spend themselves on hatred and fear, but preserved something alive. Connections, meaning, roots. Vanga said it plainly. The new world will be better than the old one for those who are worthy. Not for everyone, for those who are worthy. That sounds harsh, but it is not a verdict. It is a condition. And that condition is not about money, not about power, not about where you were born. It is about what a person carries when they approach the gates between the old world and the new. What is inside? Karagay ends his account of the dragons not with a forecast, not with a date, not with instructions. He asks a question. One question that he says matters more right now than any prediction. What do you want to create in your life? Not what do you want to receive? Not what do you want to avoid? What do you want to create? What kind of air do you want breathed in your home? In your family? In your circle? Dragons do not read our wish lists and terms and conditions. They feel intentions. And the next cycles will exhale what we plant right now. In this pause. In this short window between two breaths that we have been given. This is the answer to the question everything started with. When does this end? And how? It ends soon. Because everyone who could see further than one generation, Vanga, Nostradamus, the prophet Daniel, the Indian sages, the shaman from Siberia, all of them looked at the same point. And all of them saw beyond the breaking point not emptiness. They saw light. But not for those who will wait for that light to arrive from the outside. For those who find it inside, before it appears anywhere else. The dragon drew a breath. The old world is already exhaling. And in this silence between two breaths, what has been called an ending for thousands of years, the wise have always called a beginning.